The last step in our setup involves updating the firmware on your EV3. By updating the firmware, you ensure that your EV3 is reset to the latest LEGO standard. I'll let you in on a secret. Most firmware updates and software updates are not the addition of new features, but rather simply fixes to any errors that the manufacturer discovered after releasing the product. Even if you have a brand new EV3, you don't want to skip this step, since the firmware that was installed in the factory may not be the most up-to-date version today. Remember, you get the same EV3 brick whether you buy the educational version or the home version of the kit. But the firmware update happens from the software. And since the two versions of the software differ a little, I've made two different videos that show you how to update your firmware, depending on which software you own. In this video, I'll cover the firmware update for the educational software. If you have the home software, you should skip this video and instead watch the one specifically for the home edition. Before you can update your EV3's firmware, start up the EV3 software on your computer, turn on your EV3, and connect your EV3 to your computer using the USB cable. Updating the firmware on your EV3 essentially resets your EV3 back to the original settings that LEGO intended, and it's a good idea to do so before you continue with the rest of this course. However, I do need to warn you that this firmware update will delete anything personal that's already on your EV3, like programs or special sounds somebody may have downloaded, and so on. Generally, people save copies of all of this stuff on the computer, so it's not a problem. But if you're using an EV3 that someone else has used before, you should know that anything they put on will be erased. When you start the software, you may or may not get a message telling you to do a firmware update. Even if you don't get that message, you should still continue with this update. But if you do get the message, just click on OK to make it go away. And then what you're going to do is go to the Tools menu and click on Firmware Update. And on there you'll see a line that says Online Updates. You just want to click on Check. And when you click on Check, it's going to open up a browser window for you and show you where the latest firmware update is. And you just want to download that. Now, I'm on a Mac, so it's putting it in my Downloads folder. If you're on a PC, it may ask you where do you want to save that. But when the download has finished, I can see up here my download is almost finished. Once the download has finished, what you want to do is you go back to your Mindstorm software, and now you need to click over here on Browse and find that item you just downloaded. Now mine is in, it takes me originally to where the LEGO firmware stuff is, but I just downloaded to my Downloads folder. So here's the download, and I'm going to say Open. And now that I've got this new file in my Downloads folder, I'm going to click on Download, and that's going to start downloading the firmware update to my EV3. And you can see it says Preparing EV3 Brick, and then it starts. And at this point, you just have to sit down and wait for a few minutes while the EV3 updates. If you look at your EV3 screen, you'll see that the brick says Updating. And meanwhile, as you watch your computer screen, you'll see the progress bar, and it will be moving very, very slowly. The whole process can take several minutes to complete. Thanks to the magic of film, I've sped it up significantly here, but just sit back and have some patience. But eventually you should see this Firmware Update Successful box right here, and just click on OK, and then click on Close. There's not a lot that can go wrong with this step, as long as you just sit back and wait. Just be sure not to shut anything down while it's happening. If you find yourself waiting several minutes with absolutely no change in the progress bar on the screen, give it another few minutes. If you're still stuck, you should probably go ahead and call LEGO support. I'm hoping that all of the setup has gone pretty smoothly for you and you've made it successfully to this point. Congratulate yourself on everything you've done so far. It really does take some time and effort to do all this setup. Now you're finally ready for the really fun part, because in the next classes, we'll actually start learning about using the EV3 and finally get to program a robot. See you soon.